Shalom, brothers and sisters. Grace be unto you and peace from YAHUAH the Father and Yahushua the Messiah, his Son. This is Brother David coming to you again to bring you the Sabbath and the feast days. Are wrong. This is part 1. If you noticed, I deleted the whole series from before. Before, I was asking a question. Now it is definitive. The way that we have been celebrating the Sabbaths and the feast days, the way that we have come about the dates are wrong. Now we have to awaken to this. I searched, and I searched, and I searched. I found no other way to count YAHUAH's days in the Bible except from the new moon. That sealed the deal for me. This is the true awakening, brothers and sisters. When you awaken to this, the next step is the kingdom. This is what the Father is holding back judgment for the last portion of his people that are going to come in and gravitate towards his way of counting the days. When you do that, you are on YAHUAH's time. Now here's the question, and there's going to be many questions throughout this series. This will also seal the deal for you if you investigate it. Is there any other way in the Bible for you to count the days except through the new moon? When you check into that, you will see that there is only one way to count the days. If that is the case, you cannot follow anyone but YAHUAH. Now, we thought we were following him with that weekly Sabbath from month to month, week to week. We thought that was his way, but it is not. And everyone who is defending it is still in a strong delusion, believing a lie. I've came out of it. This is the awakening. You must come out of it. But your first step is you must investigate all of this. This is not easily found. You have to actually lock yourself down and search for him, or else you will be lost. Let's begin. Isaiah chapter 55, verse 8 to 9. And you have to remember this. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith YAHUAH. Verse 9. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. You cannot come from the imagination of your own mind. The Father has given us a book. The book reveals his mind. The only way you're going to find him is in the book. But look at the problem. You have men that are twisting the scriptures. And you don't even know because you've never checked behind them. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. You have to renew your mind. Throw away everything that you have learned. Empty yourself. Go back to the drawing board. Start all over. Ask the Father for guidance, and he will lead you, that ye may prove what is good. You have to prove everything. And acceptable, what the Father will accept. He's not going to accept whatever you want to give him. And perfect, only his ways are perfect, will of the Mighty One. Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 11 to 13. I want you to pay attention to this so that you can see how far off we really are. And I gave them my statutes and showed them my judgments. He's talking about us, our ancestors, which means us. The same behavior then is the same behavior now, which if a man do, he shall live in them. If you want to live, follow him. Verse 12. Moreover, also I gave them my Sabbaths. Look what they're for. To be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am YAHUAH, that set them apart. He sanctified us. He set us apart. We are to be different than the rest of the world. He gave us these Sabbath days to be a sign, to show that we're on the same page as him. The world is not going to be on the same page as him. This is what his Sabbaths are for. And we're talking about also the feast days. Verse 13. But, there's always a but, isn't there? The house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They walked not in my statutes, and they despised my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live in them. And my Sabbaths they greatly polluted. Then I said, I will pour out my fury upon them in the wilderness to consume them. I want you to read this whole Ezekiel chapter 20. It is going to touch your heart. If you have the Spirit of the Mighty One, this is going to touch your heart. You're going to feel this when you read it. He is not going to spare you if you have polluted his Sabbaths. I don't care how much you think that you're doing right. Remember in the last days, when the Messiah returns, there are going to be those who will say, I preach the gospel in your name. I went out in the streets and I preached to Israel. I did this in your name. I did that in your name. And the Messiah is going to stop them in midstream and says, I know ye not, ye worker of iniquity. So I think it's important that you should check and make sure this thing is 100% right. And this is what we're checking on. The Feast of Tabernacles. Leviticus 23:34 said, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of the 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto YAHUAH. When you look at the Gregorian calendar, what we're looking at here, the 7th month is in July. How did the Jews and the brothers come different dates starting from September into October? I mean, they were totally off from each other. I wanted to know how each one of them came about the dates in which they chose. I didn't know what a can of worms that I would open, but my father was leading me down a path that was going to lead to him. When I discovered that, I said, why are they using the new moon as the starting point to find the feast, but yet dismiss with the new moon to find the Sabbaths. Immediately in my spirit, I knew something was wrong. I didn't know exactly what it was yet, but I could feel it. Pain came after. Distress came after. The Father was dealing with me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't hardly eat, lost weight, everything with this. I stayed up night after night, get up early in the mornings, searching this thing out to find that we were totally in error. This let me know that the people who I thought knew way more than me, the people who we were following, the camps, they had no knowledge whatsoever about the ways of YAHUAH. They were coming from the imagination of their own minds. This is too important for that. I had to beat myself up. Why did I follow blindly without checking into this? The most important things to our master is that we have to be lined up with him. You have to be keeping his Sabbaths. They're assigned between you and him. You have to be on his time, not Gregorian time. The feast days, you have to be on time with him, not the camp's time or the Jewish time. How do you find him? I had to take it back to the place of origin. When I got there, I says, whoa, you mean to tell me that I am this far behind? The Jews say it's the black moon. That's how they start. The brothers say it's the full moon. That's their starting point. I said, which one is it? I had to investigate it. I found out neither one of them are using the way that the Mighty One has given us to count the days. So my investigation began. I found this calendar. I heard about this. This is the Creator's calendar, the way YAHUAH counts the days. And I says, okay, so I'm starting to get there. And you see at the beginning, day 1 is the full moon. The brothers say that the new moon is the full moon. And the brothers will even tell you that according to the lunisolar calendar, the way YAHUAH counts the days, when you start by the new moon, your Sabbaths and your feast days will all fall in line. Your Sabbaths would be the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. But then I found something else out. They were using the lunisolar calendar way of counting the days to get your feasts, which they were also distorting that because they're starting by the full moon. But then after they use this way of counting the days, they would resort back to that first calendar, that Gregorian calendar, to get their Sabbaths. Immediately, the Father spoke to me and says, that is not me. And the fear overcame me. I came from the church. One stumbling block after another. I've arrived at the way that the Father wants me to live. I'm an Israelite. I was brought here in ships. I understand that I have to keep the laws, the statutes, and commandments, and they were not grievous unto me. But I was worried, twisted in my spirit, couldn't even sleep anymore because I had to get to the bottom of this thing. So I started my research. Immediately, the Father took me to Amos chapter 5. Listen what Amos says. Woe unto you that desire the day of YAHUAH. Why is he saying, woe unto you that are waiting for YAHUAH to come? To what end is it for you? Are you going to go into the kingdom, or are you going to the lake of fire? Remember, he's talking about the people who are awaiting his arrival. The day of YAHUAH is darkness and not light. If you listen to our Messiah in Matthew chapter 24, he told you that the moon will be dark and the sun will not give its light. Verse 19. As if a man did flee from a lion, and a bear met him. You're fleeing from one lie, and then you run into another lie. Or went into the house, thinking that he went into safety, and leaned his hand on the wall, and a serpent bit him. That's what we're facing today. Every place you turn, there is danger. The people that you trust that are leading you correctly are leading you astray. Verse 20. Shall not the day of YAHUAH be darkness and not light, even very dark, and no brightness in it? Now look what he says next. I hate. This is the mighty one speaking. Listen to his voice. I despise your feast days, and I will not smell in your solemn assemblies. Your is a pronoun. It describes a person, place, or thing. He's speaking to the children of Israel. Read the whole Amos chapter 5. Obviously, they were not carrying it out according to his time, according to his feast days, his solemn assemblies, his Sabbaths. Drop down to 26, then he tells them what they were doing. But ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch and Cheon, your images, the star of your God, which ye made to yourselves. Look, in this passage, he has your 4 times. It's obvious that the children of Israel were not carrying out his feast days or his Sabbaths. Whose feast days and Sabbaths were they carrying out? He tells you right here, Moloch and Cheon. When I looked up Cheon and Moloch, look what comes up. Occurs only in Amos chapter 5:26. The LXX translated the word by Rippon, which became corrupted in Rimphon, as used by Stephen in Acts of the Apostles chapter 7 verse 43. Read it for yourself. Stephen gave the greatest sermon before they stoned him to death, and he told them exactly what they were doing. Who was Stephen speaking to? The Israelites. He told them that they had taken the star of their Moloch and Cheon upon themselves. That same star that you see the Jews use today, that is what he is talking about. Probably the planet Saturn is intended by the name. Astrologers represented this planet as Baalful. You know, Baal worship and its influences. And hence, the Phoenicians offered to it human sacrifices, especially children. Did you know that the Israelites were sacrificing their children also to Moloch and Cheon? Remember, the Father said, I hate, I despise your feast days, your solemn assemblies. I'm not going to smell your sacrifices. I want nothing to do with them. Encyclopedia Britannica. How did we get so far off? The deception is everywhere. Remember, we just ran from a lion and we ran into a bear. We came into the house for safety, put our hands on the wall, and then a snake bit us. The Gregorian calendar, also called the New Style calendar. Anything that says it's new, stay away. The Father wants you to come back to the old ways, which is the good way, so that you can find rest for your souls. The solar dating system, now in general use, it was proclaimed in 1582 by Pope Gregory the 13th as a reform of the Julian calendar. By the Julian calendar reckoning, the solar year comprised of 365 and a quarter days. The intercalation of a leap day every 4 years was intended to maintain correspondence between the calendar and the seasons. So it wasn't connected to the lunations of the moon. It was totally outside of the seasons. So they had to add leap days and leap years and daylight savings time. They did all kinds of things to make their calendar work. A slight inaccuracy, even a slight inaccuracy, can cause you to lose your salvation if you follow the ways of the world. You have to renew your mind. The solar year, comprising more precisely of 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, 45.25 seconds, caused the calendar dates of the seasons to regress almost 1 day per century. This is what we were following to find our days. Now, it's okay to use this calendar in this world, because how are you going to know when your work days are, when your bills come in and when you have to pay them? But you don't use this calendar to find your worship days, do you? Does this have anything to do with YAHUAH or the way he counts the days? The answer is no. So let me tell you what we have been doing for all these years. We go to the new moon calendar to find the feast. And even that, the brothers have distorted it. They're starting from the full moon. And then after they find their feast days, we go right back to this calendar, to the calendar of our enemy, the children of Satan, the seed of the fallen ones and the seed of the serpents. We go right back to this calendar to find our Sabbaths. Don't you see there's something wrong with that? When I discovered this, I found that the brothers are protecting this Saturday Sabbath in this Gregorian calendar at the expense of their souls. And if you're listening to them and following them blindly, at the expense of your soul. We can't do that. We have to check out how to be on YAHUAH's time, not Pope Gregory's time. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1 to 4. Look here, let me just show you something real quick. We're going to count how many times that you see the word time here. Let's see, in verse 1 is 1, 2, we got 4, that's 5, 3, we got 4 more, that's 9, and 4, we got 4 more, that's 13. 13 times he mentions time. Don't you think that it's important? The Father has everything on his calendar and the way he does things on point. It does not lose any time at all. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Verse 2, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. Verse 3, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up. Verse 4, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. Now we have 4 more verses here. Let's see how many times he has time here. In verse 5, you got 3, 4. You have 4 in verse 5. You have 4 in verse 6. That's 8. You got 4 in verse 7. That's 12. You got 4 in verse 8. That is 16. 16 times that he speaks about time. Verse 5, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Verse 6, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away. Verse 7, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to keep. Verse 8, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. I put this last one in. Now is the time to wake up. We have to get on YAHUAH's time. Do you know that I've looked and I found no place in the scriptures for you to count the days except for by the lunations of the moon. The sun and the moon, they work together. It's a perfect timepiece. I'm going to prove all of this through this series. I'm going to show you great and marvelous things about our mighty one. He has revealed himself to us in these last days, and it's always been there in creation. Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy mighty one. I will also forget thy children. He said we forgot. What makes you think that you know and you haven't searched it out with all of your heart, your mind, and your soul? Is it because you're listening to someone on the internet? Are they the ones who are directing your path? You have to follow the path of the mighty one. In the beginning, I told you, you have to try the Spirit, by the Spirit, to see whether it is of YAHUAH. You take that spirit of the person that is speaking and you put it to the test in the scriptures. But you see, what we're getting ready to get into now is not so easily found. You have to really search it out. What, will it take a day? A week? A month? 2 months? This is exhaustive. We've forgotten. Now we have to rediscover all of the ways of our mighty one. As we begin this series, we're going to take a journey in discovery. The Father has commissioned me to give you an algorithm so that every question can be answered. We don't want to leave anything out. this series will be open. And all of you who are out there who are, let's say, your minds are swift in understanding complex issues, we need your input. We need your questions, because we want to include your questions about this. If you have this question, probably others have the same question also. We want to address every issue. I said to myself, Father, I said to him also, Father, if this is your way, if you want us to come out of this thing, you will have an accurate description in your word of what we have to look for. How do we start our months? What is it that you have done to reveal to us your ways? He told me, he said, all you have to do is look up in the sky. And then he told me where to look so that I can get an accurate description to find out, what is it? The dark moon? Is it the crescent moon? Or is it the full moon? He showed me which one, and I will show you. It's definitive. It's clear. You don't have to do any guesswork. All you need to have is reading comprehension, and you will get through this. Let's begin. We're going to look at all of the culprits first. Then I'm going to show you the evidence. Continue to part 2. Shalom.